First reading. The House now comes to questions for oral answer, and the first question stands in the name of the Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Prime Minister. Did the Honourable Kate Wilkinson have ministerial responsibility for the departmental errors during her term as Minister of Labour, which partially contributed to the deaths of 29 miners at Pike River?
The Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Manual is clear that ministers are accountable to the House for the actions and inactions of their department, even if they have no knowledge of or involvement in those actions. The Minister made a decision that to honour the 29 men who died, her department has to show New Zealanders it takes its fair share of responsibility, and as the Minister responsible for that department, she resigned her portfolio. That was the honourable thing to do.
The Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Mr Speaker, why is Kate Wilkinson still a Minister in the Cabinet?
Tell us about Liam Ashley.
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as I pointed out, the Minister did take responsibility for the failure of the department, which is more than we can say for that member. When he was a Minister, when Liam Ashley was beaten to death in the back of a prison van, he refused to resign and said he'd stick around to fix the problem.
The Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Mr Speaker, when would the consequences of a department's systemic failure be so severe as to warrant a Minister to resign from Cabinet entirely?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, clearly when that member was a Minister, he didn't think the consequences for Liam Ashley were sufficiently severe for him to resign. In this case, the Minister decided they were sufficiently severe.
Point of order, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
That Minister ended his last answer inappropriately, and he started this one here for the second question inappropriately as well. The fact is, the question is asking about a Minister who retains one of her portfolios having unresigned the other one. That's the question at issue here, and he should be asked to focus on that rather than to attack another party's questioner when that questioner did not change the policy which the National Party did.
Order. Now, the point of order was fine to that last point. The member then entered into debating material, and he knows he shouldn't do that. Points of order are not to score political points. Did the Honourable Leader of the House point of order?
Speaking to the point of order, Mr Speaker, the question asks effectively for an example of when there would be sufficient severity. And I think what Mr English was doing was giving clear examples of when there was a consideration of a matter that did not merit that severity, therefore allowing the member who asked the question to reach some of his own conclusions.
Can I check with the Minister whether he's finished his answer? The Minister, the Honourable Bill English, to complete his answer.
Mr Speaker, as I was saying, in that example that I quoted, it obviously wasn't regarded as sufficiently severe. In this case, the Minister made a decision that the results of the inaction of her department were sufficiently severe that she would resign. The Prime Minister retains confidence in the Minister, and as he has explained, there is no indication that by the Minister's actions or inactions she contributed to the disaster.
The Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Mr Speaker, given the warnings from the unions, given the warnings from the department's own internal review that point to deficiencies, and given the letter I sent to that Minister in 2010, is it the standard of his government that a Minister can remain in Cabinet despite the deficiencies in her judgment, the refusal to accept the warnings at least 3 times? What are the standards that deem a Minister should remain in Cabinet?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member mentioned the letter he wrote. It was a considered letter, and it was taken seriously and given a considered response by the Minister. And in making that response, the Minister relied on the advice of her department in exactly the same way as her predecessor, Trevor Mallard, had relied on that advice. As the Royal Commission report shows, that advice was simply wrong. The Department of Labour was not adequately monitoring a mine that it should have known to be dangerous.
Andrew Little.
Mr Speaker, does he agree that the failure of the department to take any further action on its options to introduce check inspectors or an approved code of practice for better worker involvement in mine safety, which were being actively considered in September 2008, is of such gravity that when it is apparent that the failure has led to such a catastrophe, the Minister should resign?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the Minister has resigned in a way that I have to say was doing better than the example of the member who asked the original question. With respect to check inspectors and so on, it's possible that those kind of changes may have made a difference, but I think what is shocking about reading the Royal Commission report is that the miners were aware of the danger, the company was certainly aware of the danger, and the Department of Labour absolutely should have been aware of the danger and acted on it. No one did, and we ended up with this awful tragedy. The Minister has, in a manner of real integrity, put her hand up and said that she would take responsibility for that.
Andrew Little.
If as the Minister said in part of his last answer, that the company is at fault, will he support the urgent introduction of an amendment to the Crimes Act creating a crime of corporate manslaughter?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, I'm advised that is being looked at, and no doubt it will be looked at in the context of the legislative framework in New Zealand around ACC, which I know that member supports, which is the deal with New Zealand is that there isn't liability for accidents, and that's one issue that will have to be taken into account.
Question number 2, Todd McLeay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance.